Welcome to Celestial Insights, a weekly podcast that brings the stars down to earth. I'm your host, astrologer, coach, and intuitive Celeste Brooks. My purpose is to provide practical, unique, and insightful guidance to help you navigate the energies of the week like a boss. Hello, this is Celeste of Astrology by Celeste, and on this episode, I will discuss the astrology for the week of December 22nd, 2024. The Capricorn New Moon workshop is next Sunday, December 29th at noon Pacific time. And at this workshop, I'll talk about what could be coming up with this new moon in your life on the personal level as well as with the collective. And I do as many hot take chart readings as I can. This will be the last workshop for a while. Longtime listeners know that this has been a big, exciting year of growth for me, where I checked a bucket list item off, where I had the opportunity to be a host for Astrology Hub. That was on my vision board. I also spoke at NORWAC and other conferences and became a board member for the Organization of Professional Astrology and started teaching for Kepler College and more and more and more and more and more. And it's just been so busy that I feel like I need to take a step back, scale things down, and decide what I want to do going forward. I am going to be bringing Astrology Foundations courses back, where I will teach astrology for the ground up. So make sure you're on my mailing list. I will keep you posted about new offerings, but if there's something you'd really like to learn about, you can email me at celeste@astrologybyceleste.com. Let's take a look back at astrology in action. Last week, we had a full moon in the air sign of Gemini, and Mercury rules the sign. And on the day of the full moon, it's stationed to go direct, finishing the retrograde cycle at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. And 5 days before and after a planet stations to go retrograde or direct, and when it changes direction, its energy is intensified, and there will be stories related to the topics that the planet rules. Mercury rules communication, transportation, and commerce. It rules our thought processes as well, and it takes on the nature of what it's talking to. So Mercury stationed to go direct, so bringing back some forward momentum at 6 Sagittarius, while at the same time, Mars is retrograde, and it's currently at 5 Leo. It looked like when Mercury was retrograde, it was going back to make a trine with Mars, but right before it did, it turns around to go direct. And essentially, it's charged up with some Mars-like energy. Mars is a malefic that takes away from life. It rules problems, accidents. It severs and separates. So some of the big stories that happened included weather-related events. Gemini is an air sign, and Mercury rules wind. And with Mars, there were very problematic winds in several places around the world. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we had a first ever actual tornado in the Santa Cruz Mountains, which is an hour south of San Francisco. We don't have tornadoes in California. It's just another sign of climate change. It was very concerning. There were cars just picked up and flipped around. Also, a cyclone hit the small island of Mayotte, and there was suspected maybe even as many as 1,000 people had been killed in this tragedy, where this intense windstorm decimated this island. A Russian general was assassinated by Ukraine, and they used a scooter bomb. Scooters are a transportation device ruled by Mercury. Bombs are ruled by Mars. Unfortunately, in the U.S., again, we had a school shooting. Gemini rules early education and Mercury children. And in Wisconsin, a young girl shot up a school. It was just an absolute tragedy and just another day in America, unfortunately. But the timing with, this angry young person, Mercury goes direct and they're ready to take their action. One of the big stories that actually started mid-November when Mercury was in the shadow of the retrograde is that it started in New Jersey. People started noticing an unusual amount of drones flying at night. Some of them are the size of SUVs, and so they started calling the authorities. Finally, the governor of New Jersey reached out to the Biden administration, and the government does not have a clear and satisfactory explanation for what is going on. They're saying it's not a foreign adversary. They're saying it's not the Pentagon, but it's just concerning. On the day Mercury went direct, 2 people were arrested near Boston Airport flying a drone, and apparently they tried to run away. So there's been some arrests. There was an Air Force base that had to shut down operations for a little bit. This story is becoming more problematic. We'll see. There's some aspects coming up this week where we can get more information about it. There are all sorts of theories. Some congressperson had said something about Iran, a mothership off the coast of the country was flying these drones. The military said, no, that's not what's going on. I saw a report on Forbes, which is very reputable, where someone was saying it could be they're looking for a gas leak or radioactive material or something like that. And the guy recommended iodine pills. So I bought some iodine pills. I don't think they're needed, but I just thought, just in case there was some kind of radioactive issue in the country, they're good to have on hand. When I heard this story, the thing I got about this is, are these people mischief makers who are maybe doing some kind of psychological operation, trying to see if they can create a panic in some way? In the 1930s, Orson Welles read the novel by H.G. Wells, The War of the Worlds, on the radio, and people thought it was real and that we were being attacked by aliens, and they freaked out. It's a very famous. And so I was wondering if it could be some kind of War of the Worlds type reenactment, or maybe it's just random. People are just randomly flying drones all over the place, and there's really nothing going on. So we'll see what comes of this, but this was one of the Mercury retrograde stories, this fear that these flying objects have nefarious purposes, and the Mercury trine Mars, are they out to attack us? The Birthdate Company makes amazing products, and I am a proud affiliate. I especially love the Birthdate book. It's a fully personalized, beautiful, and unique reading of your birth chart with over 70 pages of detailed horoscope analysis. It is such high quality. I absolutely love it. They also make amazing birth date candles. You can get it for yourself or as a gift for someone else. So check out the store and use my coupon code Celeste10 for a 10% discount. Go to bit.ly/3PW3NFM. You can find that in the link in the show notes. Enjoy. The theme of this week is psychological operations, and there are 3 big things I want you to think about as we navigate this week. The first is that we're going to have a last quarter moon at 1 degree of Libra today on Sunday. Libra is an air sign. Air communicates, air connects. rules relationships like marriage and business, these one-on-one partnerships. Its glyph is the scales. It strives for balance, fairness, and justice. Diplomacy is a Libra topic. How can we find win-win solutions is a big thing with Libra. And right now, the South Node is in the sign of Libra, and the South Node is a drain. It entered in July of 2023 and leaves Libra for Virgo. The nodes move backwards through the zodiac January 11th. And so where the South Node is traveling, it can kick up topics around what this sign rules, but there's often a drain or loss related to the topic. And think about how, as the North Node at the same time, the nodes are always 180 degrees apart from each other in signs that oppose each other on an axis. Libra and Aries is the axis of relationship. And as the North Node has been in Aries, conflict is increasing and increasing and increasing. Aries rules conflict, war, and competition. And diplomacy is draining, draining, draining. And the moon phase family of this lunation began at a new moon in Libra back on September 25th, 2022, where the sun and the moon were both at 2 degrees of Libra. So a story may have been seated in your life at this time that had a pivot point or an adjustment or a course correction 9 months later, where the sun was in Cancer and the moon in Libra, both at 4 degrees on June 26, 2023. There was a lunar eclipse on March 25th of 2024 where all was illuminated. The sun in Aries and the moon in Libra, both at 5 degrees. This is a great time to think about what went on back then at the lunar eclipse, because now we have the last quarter moon where the sun is in Capricorn, the moon is in Libra, both at 1 degree on December 22nd, 2024. So if these dates, you can give 2 weeks on either side. If anything pops out about how you relate to other people or any of the other topics that Libra rules, like it could be something about legal affairs, art, culture, beauty, relationships, you can think about, is there a story around that for you? 1 degree of Libra is the degree of the midheaven of the United States chart. And in mundane astrology, the astrology of worldly events, the midheaven stands for the president. It's the start of the 10th house, which is the executive branch. So the people, the moon rules the people, are going to be focused, at least in some part, on the executive branch of the government. And the sun in Capricorn and the sun rules the leader, and Capricorn rules governments, big business, the elderly, in a square with the moon. So there's some tension between the people and the leaders. And for the United States, this might be about the drones, if this is still going on and there's still no answers. And maybe we'll get answers if we haven't gotten already by this next week, the moon cycle, where the government becomes more forthcoming about what is going on with these drones. But Saturn's at the top of the chart. Saturn in Pisces and Neptune's in the 10th house. When I look at it, Saturn's the planet of consequences, of boundaries, of the elderly. Saturn's a grim reaper. It rules death. And Pisces, a water sign. And just feel like there's dense fog hanging over the chart of the United States. So maybe there's a storm or something like that, or maybe the fog will lift over the week and we'll see what I said. Dense fog is hovering over the top of the chart, which is really interesting. This is what I wrote down, knowing this drone stuff is a big story. And the South Node is coming to the top of the chart, which is a drain. So there could be difficult news coming from the executive branch this week, or something exposed that has people upset at the executive branch or the president. People are angry about some of the people included in President Biden's pardons, which there was a guy who was involved with private prisons is being and making money off of imprisoning people is being let out, and people are furious about that. So maybe that will be a topic of discussion, or if there are any other pardons that are controversial. On this day, the sun squares the nodes. The sun spotlights things. It rules ego. It rules leaders and authorities. And the nodes or the moon are karmic. And when a planet squares the nodes, is like a choice point. You can go to the south node or the north node. And in general, we want to move towards our north node because that's where we're going, and we're releasing some of the things around the south node topics. What I wrote down is we could see stories around holding leaders accountable for acts of aggression that hurt people. Also, there could be a married couple in the news. I wrote down Joe and Mika. They're two cable hosts on MSNBC, the morning show, who have come under a lot of heat. They're effectively been canceled by a lot of the public because they've been very critical of Donald Trump, but they went down to Mar-a-Lago and kissed his ring after he won. And clearly, they're terrified about the threats he's making about throwing reporters in jail, or they also want to maintain access, but people have left their show in droves. I wonder if their show could be canceled. At this lunation, the sun is at 1 degree of Capricorn. This is the Two of Pentacles tarot card, which is it has someone juggling balls, and it can be about, remember to think about prioritizing what's important rather than trying to attack everything at once. The Sabian symbol is 3 stained glass windows in a Gothic church, 1 damaged by war. There's themes of waste and destruction with this Sabian symbol and this degree. The moon at 1 Libra is the 2 of Swords, which can be a card of indecision. The person on the card has a blindfold on, and there can be thoughts about you don't have all the information necessary. The Sabian symbol is the light of the 6th race transmuted to the 7th. There are themes of a new world order, and in Linda Hill's book, she talks about UFOs and aliens. So how on the nose is that? And creative centralization is a theme that Dane Rudhyar gives to this Sabian symbol. That's a little worrisome, themes of war and UFOs. My intuition says it's either a coincidence or mischief makers. As I said earlier, when I first heard about this, I thought it was people doing this for psychological reasons, to testing people, see if they could cause some panic. We shall see if we find out what's going on, if they are related or are not. The next thing I want to bring to your attention is that we're going to be having a T-square pattern this week. And a T-square is a chart pattern where you have 3 planets and 3 different signs that are of the same modality. The modes are either cardinal, fixed, or mutable. Cardinal is initiating energy, fixed holds the energy, and mutable is adaptable, changeable energy. And it looks like a triangle where they'll have 1 planet that squares 2 others that are opposing each other. So you have a triangle with 2 sides that are the same length. The T-square we're going to talk about is going to be in mutable signs. The mutable signs are Gemini, which is an air sign. Air communicates and connects, and Gemini has to do with thought processes as well as speech or writing. Pisces is mutable water, which is feeling and intuitive. Sagittarius, mutable fire, which is a sign of exploration and seeking. And Virgo, which is an earth mutable sign, which analyzes and likes to dig into the details and find solutions. So when you have a T-square, there's always an empty space where it's like an outlet. With these chart patterns, there's some intensity. Squares are activating and oppositions are separating, where there are two planets that are as far as apart as they can be from each other, and then they're tensely squaring this other planet where the energy can shoot out into the empty space, where things can come into our conscious awareness of this tension can lead to a struggle, but then can have some kind of resolution. When people have these in their chart, there is often a lifetime of figuring out how to work with these energies. Some people can find themselves being extremely successful by learning how to push past the boundaries of these tense aspects. The last thing I want to make you aware of is that Jupiter in Gemini will square Saturn and Pisces this week. Jupiter and Saturn are the social planets. They speak to what the collective is focused on. Jupiter expands and Saturn contracts. They're opposite principles, but they're both our teachers. Jupiter is more the kind, benevolent teacher. It's a benefic. Saturn's more of the harsh disciplinarian teacher. Saturn is a malefic. It takes away from life. They both are associated with wealth. Jupiter is a planet of generosity. So someone who's Jupiterian would be like a philanthropist who helps others through spreading the wealth around. Whereas Saturn is someone who hoards their wealth and keeps it all to themselves and uses it to control others. Jupiter and Saturn met at 0 degrees of Aquarius back on December 20th of 2020. That was right when the COVID vaccines got approval. The vaccines were a medication that aids to life Jupiter in order to limit death Saturn of Aquarius, an air-based infection that impacted large numbers of people. Aquarius is an air sign that rules the collective since they met, and they have a 20-year cycle where they meet, separate, and come back together. Artificial intelligence has been a huge theme since they met back in 2020. ChatGPT has catapulted this new technology into different realms, which are extremely powerful, but also have the potential to be very damaging to society and cultures and people. There's much talk about how can we handle this new technology. And as Jupiter and Saturn move into their opening square, there is now tension about how Jupiter has now moved into the sign of Gemini, how we can let this massive flow of information squaring Saturn and Pisces, what boundaries and limits need to be put around it. And Gemini rules airports, and Jupiter has associations with long distance travel, and Saturn delays. So there may be big stories about flights being grounded because of delays that are due to technology or storms, or potentially even these drones, because Mercury is going to be making a T-square with Jupiter and Saturn. So Mercury in Sagittarius is opposite Jupiter. So it's like a fly in the ointment is opposite Jupiter in Gemini, and they're both squaring Saturn in Pisces, so causing delays and hardship. The movie Die Hard John McClane. Bruce Willis was the fly in the ointment on Hans Gruber's butt. Yeah, so Hans Gruber, Saturn and Pisces, he was a criminal who used deception to get into Nakatomi Tower so that he could steal the wealth. But there was this tension with John McClane, who got in their way of getting what they wanted to get done. So you can think about planes wanting to take off and move, but Mercury and Sagittarius, if these drones are doing something, they could be causing a problem this week. Could be a story that we're hearing about. There's also a lot about with Jupiter and Gemini. Gemini rules reporters and news, squaring Saturn and Pisces. Saturn pressurizes. There's been a lot of talk about how the press is going to operate in the second Trump administration because he's already threatening to put reporters in jail. He loves to sue people. So there could be discussions about how reporters and the news move forward despite the threats of prosecution, retaliation, being sued. These aspects could also in some way be related to Luigi Mangione. He is being extradited from Philadelphia to New York to face charges for murdering the CEO of United Healthcare. And I can see him being transported between one place and the other, and their crowds welcoming him. Jupiter and Gemini, a bunch of people. Jupiter makes everything bigger. Gemini is an air sign. Air is humane, like people. Cheering him on, square Saturn and Pisces. Saturn rules imprisonment as he's going to jail because they see him as this, fighting against the system with the sun in Capricorn, square moon in Libra. They see him as someone who is fighting for justice for the people by bringing to the attention of the collective the abuses of the insurance companies. We may be seeing things on the water, Saturn and Pisces, where there's a big loss of wealth. This could also be about some kind of power outage or something goes down, some kind of communication, whether it's like a cyber attack or something like that, some kind of flow of communication, Jupiter and Gemini, that impacts a lot of people comes to a halt, Saturn in Pisces. Now, it could be just because somebody pushes the wrong button, Mercury and Sagittarius, an engineer makes a mistake. But we'll see what happens, and I will tell you about it. If you are embarking on a new journey, experiencing a major life event, feeling stuck, trying to make a difficult decision, or just looking to make positive changes, astrology can provide life-changing insights. There are several ways to work with me. You can come for a 60 or 90-minute astrology consultation depending on your needs. Engage in longer-term cosmic success coaching where we work together on a 3-month basis to help you overcome blocks, improve your life satisfaction, build better relationships, accomplish your career goals, and understand yourself better using the tool of astrology. Or mystic mentoring if you're an aspiring astrologer and want help with chart analysis techniques. Go to astrologybyceleste.com to check out my offerings. If you have any questions, you can email me at celeste@astrologybyceleste.com. On Sunday, the word of the day is air supply. We have the Libra moon starts at 11:07 a.m. Pacific time. This is a great time to do something artistic or creative, socializing, going out on a date, going one-on-one with you and another person so that you can focus on each other. We'll have a last quarter moon at 1 Libra at 2:18 p.m. Pacific time. And you can think about what did you learn since the new moon? The last quarter moon is the crisis of consciousness, where we can integrate what has gone on the last 3 weeks since the new moon. You can also think about what has happened, especially around the topic of relationships, fairness, balance, people pleasing, going along to get along. That has happened since the full moon of this cycle back March 25th of this year, because that was a lunar eclipse, a really big activation. The moon will meet the south node. So there's something about a drain, people experiencing themes of drain. And I wrote down loss due to lack of air, submarine or gas is something I wrote down. We may be hearing something about people experiencing a problem whereas there is a gas leak or something where there's a lack of air that could even cause a fire. This is a great time to check and make sure your carbon monoxide detectors are working. Checking your smoke detectors is a good thing to do around this time. Now, also during this week, people cooking Thanksgiving. Hopefully there's not going to be a lot of people trying to deep fry turkeys or anything like that. Back at Thanksgiving, some guy burned down his house deep frying a turkey with the Mars retrograde in Leo, a fire sign. Be extra careful about fire and knives. On Monday, the word of the day is wake up. The sun in Capricorn is squaring the nodes, both at 2 degrees. The north node in Aries, the south node in Libra. Your partner may tell you, hey, wake up. There's something important on the news. On this day, Venus in Aquarius is sextile Chiron in Aries. Chiron hurts and heals. Venus could be your partner saying, wake up, I have a splitting headache or my eye is blurry. Can you get me a Tylenol? Can you take me to the hospital? This sort of thing. A leader could be trying to figure out, should I try to bust the union with force, North Node in Aries, or negotiate and come to an agreement, South Node in Libra? They kind of want to just use the force, but maybe they will have a wake up, come to Jesus moment where they think, it's actually in my best interest so I don't get Luigi'd to come to an agreement. On Tuesday, the word of the day is narrow. This is the day that Jupiter and Gemini square Saturn and Pisces. They're both at 14 degrees. And it could be like plane is coming in for a landing, and they should have a really wide runway. You can think about the plane is Jupiter, the runway is Gemini, but for some reason it's blocked in some way, Saturn, by Pisces, maybe water. So maybe the runway is flooded, or the runway is just narrow, like with in the movie Top Gun, where the fighter planes are landing on the naval vessel. Those runways are very short or very narrow. So you got to be really specific. And if the pilot is hung over because Mercury's opposite Jupiter, Mercury's in Sagittarius, a sign of overindulgence, like they're having a difficult time landing on that narrow strip. I also wrote down 2 big ships in the sea, like in the Strait of Hormuz, could bump into each other, and that could be a problem. Like one of the captains on the ship has stayed up drinking the night before. This is the day the sun in Capricorn is quincunx Mars in Leo. They're both at 3 degrees, and Capricorn rules big business, and Mars rules conflict. So I wrote down a CEO has to respond to an accident. Yeah, that could be like the 2 big ships bump into each other and the CEOs of the company are like, oh, great, we have this big problem on Christmas Eve. Or it could be a company where Silvio and sales and Bob and marketing are arguing over the brochure information that Silvio used to sell something to a customer. and the customer's unhappy because you've overpromised something. And Sally in QC, you need her help to get to the bottom of it because the reputation of the company is in trouble because it's an important client. They'll maybe call the CEO directly. So the CEO is blowing up Silvio, Bob's, and Sally's phones. Could be something that's coming to me with this energy. On Wednesday, the word of the day is research. Merry Christmas. Maybe you're researching a recipe or you're missing an ingredient and you're researching, what can I use instead of bay leaf in this recipe? The Scorpio moon begins at 6:03 a.m. Pacific time. Scorpio is intense energy. It's deep water. And on Christmas, it's really not the best moon to be having on Christmas Day, but maybe a lot of people are dealing with heavy emotions for some reason or for some time intensity, or people are talking at the Christmas table about the drones and what is going on, and everybody has their own theory, and then they're Googling and researching, what could this be? The moon in Scorpio squares Mars at retrograde, so people can be talking about or thinking about conflict. Somewhere people are furious about something. Or compiling a report on how research subjects respond to irritation. This comes back to the psychological operations theme. The PSYOPs is what it's called, part of the reason that's why it's named what it is. On Thursday, the word of the day is pronouncement. There could be some difficult news. For some people, it'll be about someone maybe passing on or debt. Like you spent all this money on Christmas gifts and the bill comes and you're having a conflict with your partner about the expense. Or someone could be having a sewage problem with the moon in Scorpio, where the bathroom is clogged up. This is the day, and this is really interesting to see how this is going to show up. Mercury in Sagittarius is opposite Jupiter retrograde in Gemini for the third time. They're both at 13 degrees. So there could be a story that began around November 18th, had a pivot around December 4th, and this could be a final act around December 26th. Now, Luigi's mother reported him missing on November 18th. He killed the CEO on December 4th. Is this where we see his parents talking on the news or something around December 26th about what this has done to their family? Or visiting him at jail? Or this could be about him being transported to New York City. We have a balsamic moon on this day at 20 degrees of Scorpio at 5:43 p.m. Pacific time. Now, this is Boxing Day, so this could be people in the stores like trying to get the last, Teletubby or whatever gift they're trying to buy. And also Mercury in Sagittarius is square Saturn in Pisces on this day at 14 degrees. So this is the third time. The first one was November 12th. The second one was December 6th. And now on December 26th, we have both Mercury opposite Jupiter and Gemini, and they're both squaring Saturn. So this T-square, which shoots out the empty space, is in Virgo. And Virgo is a sign of accountability. It's about getting into the details. It rules health and anxiety. So it'll be really interesting to see whatever the pronouncement is. There could be an important message from your boss, parent, the president, your prime minister that causes some kind of anxiety or impacts people's health. Or potentially it's the end of suffering in some way. I've been wondering if we'll hear news from Iran. Their chart is very activated at this time where women are fighting for freedom. And part of the reason I say this, because on Friday, the word of the day is SHOOKETH. There's a Sagittarius moon at 11:46 a.m. Pacific time. Sagittarius is fiery and feisty. It seeks exploration and release from commitment and freedom. And Venus in Aquarius is square Uranus and Taurus, both at 23 degrees. This could be surprise news. I love the idea of the women of Iran and coming in force in groups to demand freedom from their leaders. Maybe there could be some kind of protest in Iran where people are shouting for their freedom against this religious oppression. Could be how we see this Mercury opposite Jupiter square Saturn. This could also be going to an exciting party. Uranus is exciting. Venus parties. We could hear about someone freed from captivity. A friend tells you they're pregnant. Be prepared for exciting news. It could be about reversals. It also could be a big fight between people who are in a relationship with Mars retrograde. But let's hope it's just a fun, feisty, fiery, inspiring news that comes out on this day. On Saturday, the word of the day is aroused. Mercury is semi-square Pluto, so this can be about in some intensity of thought or speech. And the moon meets Mercury at 16 degrees of Sagittarius. So the people could be singing, you could be at a party and people are singing George Michael's song, Freedom. So that's it for this week's episode. Sorry it's so long. I got a little long-winded. Mercury is barely moving direct as I record this on the 17th of December. Feel free to email me at celeste@astrologybyceleste.com and let me know any astrology in action stories or how the daily themes are playing out for you. Take care, and I'll catch you next week. Thank you for listening to Celestial Insights. To learn more about my work, please visit my website, astrologybyceleste.com, where I offer personal readings, horary consultations, cosmic coaching, group events, and classes to help guide people to higher levels of fulfillment. You can also find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook at Astrology by Celeste. If you enjoyed Celestial Insights, please help others find the show. Follow, rate it 5 stars, or write a nice review. I would so appreciate it. I'm astrologer, coach, and intuitive Celeste Brooks, and I'll be back next week.